Are you all there? Yeah, am I audible to all of you? Richa, Atul? Okay, good. Okay, yeah, so we'll begin the day. Today we have the subject of management process and organization. I guess you got the books. Some of you might have. Okay, some have, and uh, some are in the process of receiving it. Anyways, I have the book with me, and today we'll take up the subject. And if you can see it properly, those who have seen it, we have undergone a syllabus change of the subject, and what you would, what we would be touching upon the subject is in terms of what is management, kind of overview and key components, management as a field, what are organizations, management functions and roles, management skills, management in changing environment. Then we would also be talking about the history and evolution of management, because all that you have we are seeing in the management process has to do with past, and way back in 1800 the concept was still there. So we're looking at important contributions, trends and issues. Then we'll look at organizational and environmental constraints, the environmental effects, important environmental elements, internal and external environment, global environment and management, social responsibility and managerial ethics. This is the complete syllabus we would be touching upon in the next 4 sessions. Then you have social responsibility versus social responsiveness, managerial ethics, planning and decision making, strategies, policies and planning premises, essentials of planning and MBO, decision making fundamentals, organizing, power and authority, staffing, leadership, ingredients of leadership, managing conflict and negotiation, controlling, control techniques and IT, and then we'd be looking at some of the case studies also. Yeah. So if you look at the complete syllabi, we are seeing the concept of management. What is an organization? How do you define management? The management process of planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. That's what we'll be touching on in this subject. If you look at today's lecture, what I'm going to do is introducing you to management, foundations of modern management, the management process, types of managers, management roles and skills, the open systems view, contingency perspectives, key issues facing managers today, learning about management, and at the end of the day, of course, knowing this subject should make you a successful manager. Right? So you could all hear me? Yeah? Great. Yeah. So I'll carry on. Go ahead with the class. Okay. If you look at the history of management, the basic idea is what are the key takeaways from these management thoughts, like probably classical management thinking? What ideas were represented by the human resource approaches? What is the role of quantitative analysis in management? What is unique about systems view and contingency thinking? What are the continuing themes of the 21st century? Now, before I define what is management and what is organization, what I would like you to view is some of the trends that we have witnessed in the past 3-4 years. What are the challenges and what are the managerial response, as continuing to be the managerial response, because it's very, very significant from the organization and a managerial perspective. So we went through a global financial crisis where the challenges were like stopping erosion of net worth of organizations, ensuring survival through continued business and stream of resources, avoiding large-scale retrenching of employees. That were the challenges, but we actually saw harsh retrenchments taking place. The managerial response. Yeah, Rinki, you are asking me something? Yeah, Rinky, tell me what's the question? Yeah, continue. What is the question? What is the question, Rinky? Just these are some introductory points that can just show the relevance of management and the managerial challenges each one of us would have being part of the organization, right? So probably you don't you once you have the books, I don't think you will need the all these points. So just be attentive what is being discussed here right now. Yeah. Yeah. So the managerial response has been to come out with greater transparency in dealing with customers, empathy, being ready, move beyond cost cutting towards innovation and fundamental changes in the product offering, processes, and operations. The trends continue where we see more of globalized markets, intensifying competition, rapidly evolving technology. What the challenges in front of the organization is the organizations trying to be more responsive, efficient technology utilizing India's unique advantages such as vast human resource pool, sustainable business and industry. If I look at the managerial response towards the challenges, learning, innovation and improvisation has become a constant feature. Quality management programs that has help establish delicate balance between costs, improving product performance and threat to natural environment, developing indigenous and indigenized technology and products that are locally relevant. So we continue to, if I look at the some of the trends that are there in India, liberalized and privatized economy in the global arena, more of liberalization and privatization being emphasized. Challenges are increasing volatility and uncertainty of the business environment, vanishing protection, relative stability and predictability expected. So partnership between the government agencies and the industries in attempt towards greater readiness for competition, networking and partnership with other organizations through arrangements such as joint ventures, agreements and collaborations, improving managerial choice and decision making involving technology, capacity, pricing and capital, know-how and expertise. The trends continue where we see a lot of confusion between the Western and traditional indigenous practices. I hope I'm audible. Balancing work values required to create and maintain work culture that supports efforts towards meeting emerging challenges, shortage of required skills, less inclusive development, trial and error with hybrid convergent methods, combining values from the West and Indian tradition both rather than rejecting traditional frameworks and values or blind adoption of Western frameworks. So we are seeing a blend of Western and Eastern values. Yeah, the trends continue. If I look at the current premise that is there in the organization, it's the belief in human capital, reaffirmation of belief in the human capital. No audio? Yeah, Alok, am I audible? Demise of command and control, quality conscious and customer focused, emphasis on teamwork, preeminence of technology, flattened structure, connected and paperless, the current trends that we are seeing in organizations. Yeah, connected and paperless, networking being widely practiced and emphasized upon. There are new workforce expectations, concern for work-life balance, speed, participatory management, diverse cultures, stressing ethical conduct and integrating social values with business culture, strengthening of leadership process, creating a learning culture, managing organization learning. Organization per se and individual also become very important because these are brand brands which the individuals would like to serve in the future. Yeah, see, look at some of the definitions of management and organization. It's a consciously coordinated social unit. Yeah, Neha, what is it? Praveen, not audible at all. Check it, because I know when I'm asking that question, multiple students are responding that I'm audible. See, what my instruction would be, if you are attentive in what's going on, and once you have the book, you know, the whole concepts would be clear to you. So you don't need to actually sit down and copy all. Yeah, you would get, maybe not in the exact language and format, but yeah, it's all there in the book. The first chapter. First chapter. Right? So management refers to a process of organizing resources and directing human efforts for the successful accomplishment of organizational goals and objectives. In other words, management can be defined as a universal phenomenon that involves making optimum utilization of available resources to achieve predetermined goals. It's a set of activities directed at the efficient utilization of resources in the pursuit of one or more goals. So the main objective of management is to draw maximum output out of minimum efforts and resources. Therefore, it is essential for organization to inculcate an efficient management process. Effective management helps in ensuring the smooth and coordinated functioning of an organization, which in turn increases the overall organizational productivity. In addition, it enables an organization to keep pace with changes in the dynamic business environment. Yeah, this is Dr. Matthew here. Yeah, Alok, if you look at an organization, what we are seeing is, it's a, you know, coming together of some people, group of people, which means all that has been predicted or planned doesn't happen the same way. Hence, there are newer challenges, as I said in my introductory points. There are newer challenges facing organization and management with the current ambiguity and unpredictability. This is nothing is planned, nothing happens as per the complete plan that has been made. So it's a constant, there's a constant problem solving process as per the customer expectation, the societal expectations, and resources, as I said. Yes, good, Anupam. Yeah, there has to be number of plans today. Scarce resources in a changing environment. Why I'm stressing here is because some of you said that they need explanation. Is that clear now? All the definitions that have been talked about. So while summarizing the concept of management, I would say it consists in guiding human and physical resources into dynamic, hard-hitting organization unit that attains its objectives to the satisfaction of those served with a high degree of morale and a sense of attainment on the part of those rendering the services. It's a creation and maintenance of an internal environment in an enterprise where individuals working in groups can perform efficiently and effectively towards attainment of group goals. So if you look at three keywords, it's about a coordinated social unit, common set of goals, efficiency, organizational objective, changing environment, scarce resources, problem solving process, all that are part of the management functioning. I added here further on that it's a process of designing and maintaining an environment in which individuals working together in groups efficiently accomplish selected aims and goals or objectives. Changing environment, both internal and external, the global environment, the micro environment, and the the constitutions of employees itself. In the sense, we recently saw the the Maruti Manesar incident. We have been seeing intensifying competition in different industries. So it could be the design, it could be the packaging, it could be the cost aspect, it could be the delivery, it could be the services, anything that any company would deliver upon, and that becomes the benchmark for other companies to compete upon. Yeah. So why do we need management? Can you attempt that question? Why do we need management? 3-4 points. For achievement of goals, right? One of them could be one for achievement of goals. Optimum utilization of resources. Yeah, there is scarcity of resources, so optimum utilization of resources. Cost minimization. Do you think management should work on cost minimization? Cost minimization. Survival and growth. Survival and growth. No, but it implies that organization needs effective management to cope with the dynamic business environment. For example, PepsiCo recognized that today people are more concerned and conscious about their health. So therefore, the organization introduced a new drink, Diet Pepsi, which contains 0 calories. Thus, a change in the need and preference of people provided PepsiCo an opportunity to develop a new product. Are you getting my point? Yeah. So if you look at the brand, the number of products that are there in the society today, it's all an outcome of the societal expectations, awareness and consciousness towards different aspects, which has forced, or maybe the companies have reacted towards innovation of new. Employment generation. So what I've touched upon in terms of need for management is achievement of goals, optimum utilization of resources, cost minimization, survival and growth. I'm also talking about employment generation. Whose responsibility is employment generation? It's government's responsibility, I guess, not management's, is it? Yeah, whose responsibility is employment generation? Management, the private companies, the government, the state government, the public sector organization. Now when we saw in the Maruti Manesar incident, whose responsibility was employment? It's a combined responsibility of any effective management. So if it's a private organization, they're contributing in a big way to the society by generating employment. So efficiency in terms of employment generation is also the role of a management. And how does it result? It results from the expansion of business, which is decided and implemented by the top management of an organization. So the organization has to grow to generate and sustain employment. Isn't it? Yes, Ranjit, you have something to say? So when an organization expands its size or operation, it creates innumerous job opportunities for people. So we have seen a whole BPO and maybe a KPO and a industry surviving because of opportunities that came across. And today we are seeing also many, for example, some of the industries going through a tough time, as maybe example of an aviation industry, and some organizations trying really hard to sustain and live up to the competition. Now, last I would also like to add development of nation, in the sense that if you have highly efficient management, um, which generates employment, which uses resources properly, obviously you are contributing to the nation's growth. So today you have maybe a Japanese, big coming to India and talking about, setting up their plants, maybe in Haryana, maybe in Gujarat. But yes, we are talking about the growth of the nation. Yes, Tata is a classic example. Uh, from a national identity to an international identity, they have taken over, they have merged, and proven with time that they are capable of thinking big and making a global presence. So if I look at the objectives of management, we have like kind of maybe towards the organization, we can classify in terms of organization, towards the workforce, and towards the society. Do you agree with that? The objectives towards the organization, towards the workforce, and towards the society, because it involves directing group efforts towards the attainment of predetermined goals. Thereby management is referred as a goal oriented activity. For example, if the management of an organization may set the goal of launching a new product, while the management of other organization may set the goal of minimizing the cost of production by introducing a new method or technology of production. Right? If I look at the specific objectives towards the organization, generating sound profit to provide a fair return on capital invested in business. Managers are expected to create a surplus. Yeah, Neha, which question? Functions and the objectives. What is that? Functions and objectives? No, I said no, objectives towards the organization and towards the workforce. Yeah, the difference here is like the management might think for the organization, but at times overlook the cause of the workforce. For example, we saw in the Maruti case, they were more towards yeah. What is that, Pragya? Can you ask me that question? Yeah, please. Yeah, Pragya, please ask the question. I'm waiting for your question. Yeah, look, what is that? Yeah, I'll come to that. Wait, I'll come to all those functions of leading planning. We have almost 12 sessions in store. Yeah, Alok, what is your question? Objectives is basically the achievement of goals. Yes, Ramdurg, you're right. So if I look at the objectives of management towards organization, as I said, it's a generating sound profit to provide a fair return on capital invested in business, getting maximum output with minimum efforts and resources, combining various resources such as capital, labor and materials in the best possible way so that various costs are reduced, utilizing the factors of production in such a manner that all the wastages are reduced up to the minimum level, as I talked about cost minimization, ensuring the survival and solvency of the organization, growing and expanding the organization, and improving the goodwill of the organization. Yeah, Ruchi, what's the question? And if I look at the objectives of management towards workforce, providing fair remuneration in exchange of services rendered by employees, do you agree with that? The first objective which I mentioned, providing fair remuneration in exchange of services rendered by employees. Yeah, so you can see the distinction in their objective towards organization and workforce. Developing employees through continuous training and development programs. Yeah. Taking the participation of employees in the management and prosperity of the organization. Developing a sense of job security in the mind of employees. Coordinating and motivating employees to perform their level best. Sustaining good working conditions. You have objectives of management towards society. Providing goods and services at reasonable prices. You agree that? You agree with that? Conserving environment and natural resources. So providing goods and services at a reasonable prices. Conserving the environment and natural resources. Scarce resources we already talked about. Dealing fairly with suppliers, dealers and competitors. Preserving ethical values of the society. Yeah, Alok, which point you want an explanation? Alok, could you respond? Yeah, kind of. Community interest. Contributing towards, let's say there are some institutions, like if you buy some of the Unilever products, you'll find that every rupee from the product which you buy goes to the development of a school. So educational cause is something which they stand for. Some organization stands for girls education, building of homes, schools. Yeah, so if you look at CSR activities, we'll be touching upon that. So there are organizations who are contributing in full strength and with the knowledge of the customers towards how they are allocating their financial resources. And today the law is also making it mandatory for organizations to contribute towards the community wherever they have their plants and offices. 2% of their profits. Yes, Amit, yeah. And today with intense communication happening, it's all there in the public domain to know and to capture what each one is doing. Yeah. And if you reflect back upon your own organization, maybe not in a big way, in some way or the other, they might also be contributing, if you can recall. Or the organization would have stood up for causes. Yeah, this slide basically talks about the various managerial skills that are required by any individual: the technical skill, the human skill, the conceptual skill, the diagnostic skill, communication and political skill. Yeah? Why do you think we require all that skills? Why do you think we require all that skills? Technical, human, conceptual, diagnostic, communication. Why do you think we require those skills? Yeah, look, why do you think you require those skills? I was talking about the levels of management there, and if you look at the management levels, the general and the functional managers. Yeah, so you have top level managers, you have middle level managers, your first line supervisors. There is organizational hierarchy. The functions which a manager would indulge in is planning, organizing, leading and controlling. If you see those thin lines, you would see the contribution of each level in these functions, right? Yeah, I was talking about this: human skills, conceptual and design skills, and the technical skills. So what is the basic idea of discussing this? Skills vary in importance at different management levels, right? So technical skills could be maximum at the front level, which narrows down to the top management because they are more into strategizing. So you have conceptual and design skills at the top management, And middle management, they have to organize and execute and implement, so they'll have more of human skills. No, Shweta, you're seeing the right slide. I just talked about the technical skills, human skills, conceptual skills. Yes. So the top management with skill is the maximum. Yes, Alok, you could ask your question. What is design skill you're asking? Yeah, the you know, the organizational design in terms of which all in which all products and services they would like to diversify, geographic locations, all that. Products and services. Design is basically products and services. The markets, the geography. Middle management. See the number. The number slide is not very significant. What is significant is you trying to make an effort to understand what is being discussed. Apeksha, what's your question? Can I go ahead, please? Yes, very right, Ashwini. Your point is very right because there you are to execute, interact, organize, and carry out the function. True. Yeah. Can I carry on? Carry on. Can I continue with the discussion? Yeah. So the next function we are talking about is the managerial networks. Can you just tell me? I discussed about you know, the managerial response or the need of networking with people. If you look at the managerial skills, besides technical, conceptual, and uh, human skills, I also mentioned about diagnostic, communication, political skill. What are the networks which a manager has to the internal and external network? What is that? What am I referring to here? What am I referring to here? Yeah, today if you look at the profile of a manager, you are constantly interacting with people internal to the organization as well as every function probably have, you know, external accountability which they have to manage and maintain. So that is a very critical function as far as a manager is concerned in terms of maintaining the network internally and externally. Then you have managerial responsibilities. You have responsibility towards your shareholders. How? What is your responsibility towards shareholders? Employees, consumers, inter-business relations, government, and community interest. As I just discussed in the previous slide. Yeah, any questions on this slide, please? Marketing, of course, would have to maintain a lot of external network, but besides internally, you have to network with your production department, with your finance department, with your R&D department, HR department. Yeah. Political skills, very good question. I was thinking, no, nobody asked me that question. What is a political skill? Before I comment on that, I would like some of you to respond to that. What is a political skill and why have I mentioned it? Yeah, there's a lot of licensing there. They are not necessarily with the government, but political skill basically talks about your own, your own skill to sell an idea or maybe convince a group of people, uh, which could be an organizational cause, but there is a political gain. There could be some personal gain out of that, conviction and selling that idea to the organization or to the management. Not exactly diplomacy, it's some kind of gain which an individual is looking at. It could be for the department, it could be for self, it could be for a team, it could be for a group. But yeah, there is some kind of a self gain there. I don't know whether you would agree to the point that that is required or not, but Shikhar, yeah, tell me what is that? Yeah, we are not talking about the ethicality of it, but yes, that exists, and that is why I mentioned it here. Yes, very good, very rightly said. Diagnostic skills, you're able to, when you go to a doctor, what does the doctor do? You state something, and by asking a few questions, additional questions, he tries to understand what needs to be done. So diagnostic basically is something which is visible, but something which could be understood by the face value of an incident. But as a manager, you got to be using your academic and experiential skills to understand more about a situation before you prescribe what needs to be done, before you start resolving it. That's what I would say as a diagnostic skill. Is that clear? Is the class able to understand what's being discussed? Can I have some response? Is the pace fine? Okay, yeah. So I just wanted to mention that I am Dr. Matthew here and not Nidhi Mathur. She was supposed to take the class, but she couldn't make it today. So I'll be taking all your 4 sessions. Yeah? Yeah. So the major functions which you were asking me since the beginning of the class, and which I've started just referring it to right now, is your managerial functions of planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. I've also mentioned of coordinating, right? So if you look at planning as a function, it involves determining the goals and objectives. Which one, Neha? Which functions are you talking about? No, planning could be, yeah, the intensity of planning could vary in different levels, but everybody has to plan. And planning for different reasons. Planning for strategic reasons, planning for operational work, planning for execution, right? So planning is involved in every manager's. Yeah, Alok, carry on with the question. Conceptual skills, what is that? Is the major understanding of a situation or your organization. See, functional is your functional or technical is your functional expertise, right? Is your functional, you could be good in HR, you could be good in marketing, you could be good in finance, but conceptual is how do you integrate all these different functions and see a larger picture for your organization. How does an organization decide whether you should go in for a particular expansion or a merger and acquisition? If you have a very narrow concept of, let's say, your financial knowledge or maybe production knowledge, you will not be able to, understand and predict and foresee that bigger picture of the organization. Is that clear, Alok? So conceptual basically talks about the larger understanding of the environment, of the market, of your customers, of various macroeconomic policies, global policies, the impact of those policies. Clear? So if an organization wants to enter into the insurance sector, it might appear as a very lucrative industry, right? So they might see that there is a huge market there, and let's say if I as an observer sees that 65% of the market is held by LIC of India, and I want to have some of their market share. So you see number of insurance policy, insurance organizations there in the industry today. But then there is a governing authority, there is a market dynamics, there is customer expectations, belief, trust, various deliveries of those policies, Yeah, so I might see that, I might understand that this market is good, but how do I know that I will be good at it? What all do I need to excel in that industry? Technical could be your sellers, somebody who's going to sell your policies. Whether you have them or you're going to buy them, poach them. Right? Then there are bigger questions of not just the products, but the overall presentation. Overall trust you could generate among the customers. Yeah, as I said, we require tech as well as conceptual skills, but conceptual today is more on the top level. And I think while you have enrolled for a managerial degree, you are increasing your conceptual skill. Is that clear, Look? Yeah, look, yeah, what is that? I said while you have enrolled for this degree, you are increasing your conceptual skill. Yeah, so I look at some of the managerial functions where planning involves determining the goals and objectives that an organization aspires to achieve within a given period of time. I had just shown you that slide. If you can just look at that slide once again, probably you're. Yeah, just see that slide, Alok. Can you just give me a one-liner about that slide, Alok? Which level, which managerial level has the highest of what? Which skill? Yeah, which skill? Yeah. Have you seen how technical skills have narrowed down? See, we recently saw Infosys hiring. Can you all hear me? Can you all hear me? Yeah. You would have noticed that recently Mr. Kamath has been hired as one of the directors of Infosys. Yes? Why do you think he is from the banking industry? Why do you think he has been hired at the top level? A banking industry guy for a software industry, IT industry. Why do you think that has happened? Yeah, somebody who has hands-on experience of establishing and understanding market and replicating that success in the IT industry. Is that clear? Yeah, so his conceptual skills in terms of visualizing, envisioning, leading, and helping people down the line to make it happen. Yeah, so Mr. Kamath might not be an IT guy. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, Mr. M.V. Kamath might not be an IT guy, but he is there at the top of Infosys. Is that clear? Yeah. Okay. So planning also involves developing alternatives and selecting the best course of action among the available alternatives to accomplish a set of objectives. Organizing refers to the arrangement of work, processes, authority and resources and employees in the right order so that all organizational activities can take place in a defined and orderly manner. Staffing involves the right number of people at the right place with right skills and abilities. Directing involves influencing, motivating, encouraging, counseling, mentoring, and guiding the employees to work towards the accomplishment of organizational goals and objectives. Yeah, look, carry on with the question. The pre-scientific era, which can be classified from AD 1000 to 1880. The classical era, 1880 to 1930. Now, what was that, Alok? Previous question? I'll be stuck and I'll not be able to go ahead. Planning and controlling. See, basically when you plan, there's a planning premise and you want to execute the plan uh, as you have chalked out, right? And there could be various environmental and organizational constraints, right? So planning basically involves the determination of goals and objectives, right? The controlling talks about whether the goals and objectives which you have set are achievable and is being achieved or not. So the actual and the desired output is constantly compared, reviewed, maybe rewritten, and additional resources that are required or maybe roadblocks that are there are eliminated. Is that clear? Planning and controlling. Yeah, there are measurement systems in place. Our Prime Minister constantly says, early fiscal year they would say the growth would be 8%, 9%, 8.4%, but while you're moving through that year, planning is for the future. So present is something which you're going through. Controlling refers to the function through which the actual and desired output is measured. So planning is an aspiration, I would say, efforts towards an aspiration. While you're wanting to achieve a certain growth, for example, from the economic point of view, you would see there is inflation, there's a price rise, there are global, global effects, policies which has an impact on your plans. Similarly, for organization, for example, if you look at the, the way Tata's Nano car has moved, isn't it? You had a Shingur case where everything was planned. You had to go out to roll out the car, and there was this political problem or the environmental problem or people problem, whatever you may call it, and it did not happen. Yeah. And also if you look at maybe sales of some products, you want in a certain fiscal year the growth to be of certain percentage, certain number of units, certain revenue to move in. Yeah. Now because of competition, because of changing customer expectations, or some other better product which has come up, you are under competition. Now we recently saw the Maruti Manesar case. Is that clear? So the damage control or steps to see what is the actual output, why it is low from the predicted, or your your desire could be higher, in the sense you would have planned for less, there is more opportunity available. So basically analyzing the opportunity and threats, and making sure that what is desired is achieved also. Is that clear, Alok? Is that clear? Planning and controlling. So measurement systems in place, perception surveys in place, communication in place. Yeah, Alok? Not much. Why? What happened? Yeah, true. Controlling refers to the function through which the actual and the desired output is measured. Yeah, controlling keeps a check on the planning process. If you don't have control measure systems in place, your desired output you might not achieve. I want certain number, let's say company says certain number of units needs to be produced in a certain year. Right, so you have a review every maybe quarter, every 15 days, every month. Are you moving in the right direction? Will you be able to achieve? If you're not able to achieve, what are the reasons? It could be a mere employee problem. Is that clear, Alok, now? Alok, is it clear? Yeah, yes, Chalini, Sushmita, yes. How frequent? It depends upon how much of constraints you have. If you're an organization which you have had, where you have had number of problems in the last couple of years, then obviously the review should be maximum. Where you have resources also, in terms of, let's say, human resource itself, new people continuously coming in. So how do you induct them? How do you train them? How do they understand the organizational vision and move and carry on with the same pace as where you are? Plus, how much environmentally savvy you are, how much of changes you're bringing in terms of the environmental demands. Industry you are in. Yeah, industry is a big, I would say business, when you're, Ashish, when you're referring to business, I would say the industry. Yeah, the automobile industry could be one, the pharmaceutical industry could be one, the insurance industry could be one, the banking industry could be one. So recently, the SBI head came and said we should, the government should eliminate the cash reserve ratio, CRAR, where the banks have to mandatorily keep a proportion of their money as in a liquid phase. Right, so industry wise there are expectations, and organization wise also, I would say. For example, if you look at the last 1 year trend of Maruti, you would see that they had labor problems and they had a huge market demand also. So even though if the market demand was high and they were trying to meet that, they were not able to resolve it through their employees. See how much of loss, and finally they had to go in for a lockout. Is that clear, Alok? So what my stand would be, when you plan, you need to understand how much of the frequency, or maybe the measurement systems, how frequently you need to monitor, so that you are able to achieve the desired output. Yeah. Some of the leading names here in the evolution of management. If you look at administrative theory, you have Henry Fayol and Mary Parker Follett. In the bureaucratic management, you have Max Weber. In the scientific management, you have Frederick Taylor and the Gilbreths. In the behavioral era, you have the very famous Hawthorne experiments. I have intentionally put on the era so that we are able to understand the environment that existed during that particular period of time. And the modern era, where Douglas McGregor wrote the book The Human Side of Enterprise in 1960. Is that clear? Yeah. The pre-scientific era, I would say, is a difficult era where the economy was agrarian, the level of workers was illiterate, the workers' expectations were to take care of the family, the management tools and techniques were crude, and managerial role, there was no formal management. So you had a barter system there. If you look at the administrative management, contribution of Max Weber is immense. The era was industrial. Level of workers were literate, right? The workers' expectations were economic, crude to sophisticated, and Fayol's 14 principles were in place. So Max Weber in 1864 to 1920 developed the bureaucratic management theory. He developed this theory on considering the fact that a goal-oriented organization comprising thousands of individuals would require a set of regulations and controls through a system of management. So according to the bureaucratic management theory, there should be a clearly defined hierarchy, regulations, and authority. Weber advocated the bureaucratic form of management where activities and objectives were wisely planned and divisions of work were clearly explained. Weber's theory of bureaucratic management also lays emphasis on enhancing technical competence of employees and evaluating their performance on the basis of merit. Today, the term bureaucracy is often taken in a negative sense to describe bureaucratic organizations that put impersonal efficiency before the needs of human resource. Bureaucratic organizations are seen as large and impersonal organizations that have no concern or commitment towards its employees. However, Weber, through the bureaucratic organizations, sought to improve the performance of well-recognized organizations by making their operations predictable and productive by continuous controlling and monitoring. The concepts given by Weber regarding the theory of bureaucracy of management are much similar to the concepts given by the scientific management theorists. Bureaucracy has been successful for many organizations such as General Electric and Xerox, where individuals have embraced teamwork as suggested by Weber. So it includes the following principles: a well-defined hierarchy. It shows that all positions within a bureaucracy are structured in a way that allows the higher level managers to monitor and control the performance of individuals at lower levels of an organization. This explicit chain of command helps in maintaining control and order throughout the organization. So bureaucracy, as Max Weber said, is about control and order. Division of labor and specialization. It involves giving responsibility to the employees according to their specialization. Yeah, in this way, each employee has the essential expertise to do a particular task in an organization. Effective standards. It involves setting operating standards and guidelines that direct all organizational activities performed by the employees. Impersonality, because rules are more important. Uh, Hence, more for organization and less for the individuals. And for every, work, there are standard operating procedures and formal rules. Yeah, Suraj, what is your question? Yes. The less said, the better. Why we are discussing this is that these are the important principles they contributed then, which still exist in organizations, right? And since people are the ones, or the managers are the guys who practice this, it has been subject to a lot of criticism. But in some way or the other, yeah, Anubhav, it's an old school, but it is still prevalent. That's a big thing, and that is why we need to study about it. If you look at the scientific management, it was built upon the contributions of Frederick Taylor, Henry L. Gantt, and the Gilbreth. The school was founded as a result of increasing need of productivity. Productivity had to be increased, and that is why the scientific researchers pursued for. So when the supply of labor in the United States fell short of the demand, the only way out was realized by the experts was to increase workers' efficiency. Yeah, Atul, I'll come back to your question. Let me just continue this, please. The founders of the scientific school of thought made various contributions in the field of management. So if you look at Frederick Taylor, 1856 to 1915, he is known as the father of scientific management. He began his career in 1875 as an apprentice in a small machine shop in Philadelphia, US. After that, in 1978, he joined the Midwell Steelworks as mechanist and went up to the position of chief engineer in 1884. Throughout his career, he was concerned about enhancing the labor productivity without putting stress on workers. He conducted many experiments in this regard, and through his experiments, he developed a theory of management called scientific management. The theory of scientific management, or the scientific school of thought, involves the application of scientific methods of study and analysis of various management problems. The theory of scientific management focuses on applying scientific and logical techniques to improve workers' efficiency. So basically, if you look at what is scientific management, it means knowing exactly what you want, you're meant to do, and seeing that they do in the best and the cheapest way. So he worked on developing the principles of scientific management based on production line and time system. The system involves measuring the productivity of individuals with respect to the time consumed. He used the time study to break jobs into subcomponents and then designed quick and easy methods to perform each job. Yeah, modern Six Sigma, yes. Frederick was able to find out productivity of a worker by comparing the actual output with the projected output. He then advised employers to pay workers according to their productivity and created the differential rate system of wage payment. So the practical lessons which we see even today is about making results based compensation of performance, which was not part of the bureaucratic method. Rules and procedures are important there. Carefully design jobs with efficient work methods. Carefully select workers with the abilities to do these jobs, right man for the right job. Train supervisors to support workers so that they can perform jobs to the best of their abilities. The two other important contributors in the scientific school of thought is Henry L. Gantt and the Gilbreths. So according to Gantt, every worker who finished the assigned work at the end of the day should get a 50% bonus. He further improved upon this idea by adding the supervisory element. He proposed that every supervisor whose subordinate reaches the desired standard of production also qualifies for bonus. Right? So there is management application coming in place along with science here. The Gilbreths, who were the married couple, made their contribution form of fatigue and motion studies to the school of thought. Now, according to them, the ultimate, yes, you're right, current incentive based, studied and identified way back in 1860s. According to the Gilbreths, the ultimate purpose of scientific management was to help workers in maximizing their output and realizing their full work potential. Now, in their study, they tried to reduce and eliminate the tasks that were not necessary to perform, which helps in reducing the stress. Yeah, am I audible? Okay, yeah, so we just had we were discussing about the evolution of management, and we discussed the classical school of thought and the scientific school of thought just before we went for break. Before that, we discussed management, a basic definition of the functions, objectives of the management towards workforce, towards society, towards the organization, and the various skills that are required, the human skills, the conceptual skills, the technical skills required for the different levels of management. So basically the purpose of the class for the first session was to introduce the management, the concept of management, the concept of organization, the important contributors to the development of management thought, and continuing with that, we moved on to the evolution of management. So I intend to touch upon, if you have the books from till chapter almost 4 today. I don't know whether I'll be able to complete that, but that's what the plan is. So I need to slightly expedite the whole process. Yeah, you will get the link towards the class. So now what I'm going to touch is the behavioral era, which existed from year 1930 to 1960. The assumption here about people are that they are social and self-actualizing. The major contributors are Elton Mayo, where the Hawthorne experiments were conducted. Theory of human needs, where Abraham Maslow talked about it. Theory X and Y, Douglas McGregor contributed theory X, Y and theory Y. In the conceptualization of management about people they govern or they have under them, right? The behavioral school of thought. The behavioral school of thought emerged when the need for harmony at workplace was realized. We just had Mary Parker Follett saying management is both art and science, of getting work done. So that is where the realization started beginning of having to get your work done through people. 1968 to 1933. From 1930 to 1960, that was a time when the role of people was significant, was being considered significant and not merely as a means towards the end. Managers realized that behavioral patterns could not be easily predicted. They felt a need to better understand the human nature and became more interested in the perspective of people. The behavioral school of thought greatly borrowed from psychology and sociology. So several behavioral scientist experts and their contribution to the field of behavioral school of thought are there. For example, the way you studied about various other contributors in other schools of thought. So you had the human relation movement, which is also called as Hawthorne studies, which the Hawthorne Western Electric Plant began in 1924, where numerous experiments were conducted to study the work-related factors that affect the employee's morale and productivity. These experiments laid the foundation of industrial psychology and evolved as a study of employee motivation, morale, and human relations. So the experiments that were conducted were the illumination experiments between 1924 to 1927, relay room experiments between 1927 to 1932, mica splitting test room experiments, mass interviewing program from 1928 to 1930. The bank wiring room study 1931 to 1932. So almost from 1924 to 1932, these studies were conducted to see how the group in which people worked had an important role in productivity. So if I look at the illumination experiments which was conducted between 1924 and 1927 was a very significant experiment towards understanding human psychology. The idea behind the study was, the employees were divided into two groups. One was the control group and one was the experimental group. So the control group, in the control group there was no change in any form in their working style. Whereas in the experimental group there was number of changes that were being introduced to the tune of like giving more rest, breaking the number of employees into groups, change in illumination, high illumination, low illumination towards no illumination, and individual attention, supervisors and researchers being attached to small groups, interaction happening. Two groups were formed. The first group, control group, was made to work under the existing illumination condition throughout the experiment tenure, and the second group was made to work in a changed illumination conditions. Are you all listening to me? Are you able to listen, understand? Are you all able to see the slide? And the experimental group was made to work in the changed illumination condition. The findings were astonishing because the productivity of both the groups increased. In the second chance, the researchers decreased the light intensity. This time also the productivity went up for both the groups. Therefore, they reached out a conclusion that there was something more than wages, incentives, working hours and working conditions that was eventually driving the productivity of employees. The reason could not be identified, and these experiments paved the way for another series of experiments called the relay room experiments. Relay room experiments were conducted by Professor Elton Mayo and his associates in 1927. See, this was a time when a lot of diagnosis was being done about how to increase productivity. Was it merely science, or had it more to do with science and logic? The control group and the experimental group. So the relay room experiments were conducted, these experiments were conducted in a test room with the help of two girls. The two girls were asked to select 4 more girls, and all the 6 girls were given the task of assembling telephone relays. These experiments incorporated manipulation and numerous factors such as incentives, work duration and rest periods duration to measure their influence on the productivity of girls. The performance and productivity of girls were observed for 5 years by changing various factors from time to time. The findings suggested that the variations in factors such as pay, incentives, rest and working hours do not cause variation factors such as productivity. Is it clear? Then came the mica splitting test room experiments, where the piece weight system was kept constant and changes in work conditions were incorporated. It was observed that the productivity of workers increased by 15% for a period of 14 months. From 1928 to 1930, 21,000 employees were interviewed to record their concerns and grievances. The findings indicated that certain factors have an impact on the productivity of workers. When the workers talk and speak out their grievances, then their morale increases. So worker satisfaction is directly related to the social status of the working organization. Then came the bank wirings room study from 1931 to 1932. That was conducted to observe and analyze the dynamics of a work group when incentive was introduced. For the purpose of experiments, a group of 14 workers was employed on bank wiring. The work was distributed between 9 wiremen, 3 soldiermen and 2 inspectors. 3 soldermen. In bank wiring room study, the work group formed a rule that the group would perform a certain pre-decided quantity of work in a day. The entire group adhered to this rule regardless of pay, which implies that group rules were more important for the members. Thus, it was suggested to bring the management and workers' objectives aligned to work towards the common goals and the betterment of organization. Wait. Yeah. So the basic idea was to find out what went in towards the productivity of employees. The key findings were that groups were very important. The personal attention they got from the researchers was very, very significant. The employees shared their grievances with the researchers or the supervisors, and hence were more happier than when they kept it to themselves. The illumination was brought down, but the competition that the researchers set in between these groups, small groups, brought in, immense competition among these groups, which increased the productivity. So light did not play a major role towards productivity, because illumination was brought down to the level of moonlight. Is that clear? During the same time, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which was researched by Abraham Maslow, was recorded, and he identified 5 needs in the employees, which were the physiological needs, which includes needs for hunger, thirst, shelter, sex, and other physical needs. Safety needs include need for safety and protection from physical and emotional harm. Social needs include needs for affection, belongingness, acceptance, and friendship. Esteem needs includes need for internal esteem factors such as self-respect, autonomy, and achievement, as well as external factors, esteem factors, status, recognition, and attention. Self-actualization needs include need for drive to become what one is capable of becoming. It includes growth, achieving one's potential, and self-fulfillment. All these needs of an individual must be satisfied in a hierarchical manner, which is usually not. Multiple needs can continue to govern an individual, and the individual or employee can, constantly pursue to satisfy a number of needs at the same time. For example, while you are looking for your physiological needs, you are also working towards your esteem needs. So this was another, way of kind of diagnosing or understanding the needs in employees. Then came the famous theory X and theory Y, propounded by I have stripped out what? I'm just looking at the theory X and Y. Okay, theory X and Y basically talks about different views about human beings. One view is fundamentally negative and referred to as theory X, whereas the other one is fundamentally positive and referred to as theory Y. The points of difference between theory X and theory Y are kind of: theory X believes that employees basically dislike work and try to avoid it whenever possible. It involves controlling, threatening, and punishing employees to achieve goals. Presumes that employees are lazy so that they avoid responsibilities and wait for formal directions. Presumes that most employees are less ambitious and give more value to secure working environment. Theory Y believes that employees are self-directing, are career-oriented, they like work, and working is as natural to employees as doing other activities. Presumes that a normal person can learn to accept, even take responsibility. Presumes that employees are creative and ambitious in nature. So McGregor had the views that theory Y is more valid. Therefore, he proposed that by allowing employees to take part in decision making and assigning them challenging jobs, their motivation level can be increased. However, there is no proof that this is a valid and successful theory to motivate employees. What basically all these slides talked about is, or the thoughts talked about is, how each era significant experiments were conducted to understand the contribution of people towards productivity and what can be done to help people contribute more. Then came the modern approach to management, which consists of the quantitative approach, the systems approach, and the contingency and systems approach, the quantitative approach also, management science. What basically this particular modern approach says is, it refines and extends and combines all the classical and neoclassical approaches to management. So the quantitative approach to management refers to an approach which is also known as management science approach. It was developed during 1950. It provides systematic and scientific analysis and solutions to the problems faced by the management. Quantitative approach to management stresses on using mathematical and statistical tools such as linear programming, simulation, probability queuing theory, and game theory for solving complex managerial problems. These quantitative tools help modern managers to take accurate decisions. Am I audible to all? Yeah, Alok, you had one question. Carry on. Alok, what is your question? So these quantitative tools of decision making are also called the operation research tools. The quantitative approach involves using computer-aided technology in various functional areas such as production, finance, costing, transportation, and storage. If the McGregor, you have all these in page number 15, 16, 17. 15, 16, 17. Yeah, all that is there towards the end of the chapter, first chapter. The contingency approach to management refers to an approach that was developed by managers, consultants, and researchers who practice the management theories in real life. It is also called the situational approach because the practitioners of the contingency approach found that the management practices and principles that worked in one situation were not feasible or applicable in other situations. So according to this approach, managers are supposed to identify which techniques would be best applicable in which situation at a given time under definite circumstances. So solutions are not universal. Is that clear? So your organizational history, your culture, the situations around, the context, the decision making, the complexity of the problem all has to be studied to replicate a solution, right? So an example can, for example, when the rate of productivity in a publishing organization needs to be increased, a classical theorist may advise a work simplification scheme. Yeah, are you all able to hear me? Okay. So the business, as I said, the business environment is strongly influenced by the external environment in its accomplishment of objectives, implementation of strategies, internal functioning, and even the existence of even in the existence or survival of the organization. So the business environment constitutes factors or constraints that form the circumstances under which business organizations and their managements must operate in a particular country. It represents anything which influences and determines the decisions, strategies, processes, operations, and performance of a business organization. So after the discussion of this chapter, you should be able to understand what is business environment, explore the importance of the business environment, comprehend the characteristics and different components of business environment, appraise how to manage the business environment and the steps to be followed to develop a strategy to align business with its environment. So business environment creates threats and opportunities for different business entities. Are you all able to see the slides? Okay, I'm just uploading it again for let's see if we'll be able to see it. Meanwhile, I'll just continue with the audio. You just listen to it. A business organization must continuously monitor and adapt to its environment if it is to survive and prosper. The successful organization is the one in which it's in a position to timely identify, appraise, and respond to the various opportunities and threats in an environment. This enables the organization to make best use of available opportunities and develop strategies to ward off the threats in a timely manner. Audio is there, yeah, students, audio is there. Are you all able to hear me? Some of the characteristics of the business environment is the environment being complex in terms of factors, events, conditions, and influences. There are some simulation tools like Crystal Ball that enable the strategists to understand the complexity of business environment. The environment is dynamic in terms of constantly changing. Globalization is one aspect, free movement of capital is another aspect, technology is constantly evolving and changing, and technology adaptation is something which every organization is pursuing. If you see Samsung and Apple and maybe Microsoft, every quarter probably they would like to bring in some change in the technology and bring in new products in the market and intensify competition. There is unrestricted flow of information to one and all through the internet at a very low cost. So customers can have easy access to comparison of information and choose their products and services. There are falling trade barriers, rising importance of integration of technology. We have cloud computing as a result, emergence of information savvy consumer who's benefiting from these developments. Environment could either be your opportunity or it could be your threat. Are you able to see the slides? Venkatesh, are you able to see the slides? Now? No? Yes, no. Some are saying yes, I'm not sure actually. Why is some saying yes then? Are you able to see it now? Meenakshi says yes. Now yes. Okay. Now also no? Taking a lot of time in uploading. I don't know what happened. Yeah, Alok, you had a question, you could carry on. Yeah, we are touching upon the second chapter. When do you call a threat? That's what you're asking? Yeah, which one? Threat and opportunity? Okay. Threat is, when everybody is doing it and you are not able to cope up with it. Right? You are losing your market share. For example, if you see the banking industry, a lot of private banks have come across and shown the public sector how the banking is. And some of the public banks have actually tried to cope up with that, with the intensifying competition. So you see as an opportunity. The same competition could be an opportunity and a threat. Is it clear? Yeah, it's still loading. I don't know why it's taking so much of time. Slides, yeah, I think now it's there. So we will be talking about what is business environment, explore the importance of the business environment, comprehend the characteristics and different components of business environment, appraise how to manage. So what is business environment? It's the aggregate of all conditions, events and influences that surround and affect it. It constitutes the factors or constraints of a business that form the circumstances. It represents anything that influences, affects and determines the decisions, strategies, processes, operations and performance of a business organization. Here we'll be talking about the internal and the external environment, which helps the organization to achieve its predetermined goals and objectives. So a manager needs to make sense of the business environment in which he or she has to operate. Environment is complex, unpredictable, changing. Trade tariffs are declining. Technology upgradation, globalization is one important factor. Free movement of capital is there. Emergence of information savvy consumer is making it all possible in technology adaptation. Dynamic, constantly changing. If you look at the telecom industry, especially the mobile industry, the computer industry, you will see Microsoft, you will see Samsung, you will see Apple computers constantly upgrading the technology. Multifaceted. Why do we call it multifaceted? Yeah, why do we call it multifaceted? Yes, Shridhar. Yeah, multifaceted basically talks about a lot of perspectives towards that environment. Yeah, and it has far-reaching impact. So the environment in which a business organization exists has a far-reaching impact on the growth and profitability of the organization. Depends critically on the critically on its environment. Not understood the multifaceted. It could have different perceptions. Multifaceted is, as I said before, it could be an opportunity or a threat. It could be an opportunity or a threat. The same environment, some organization would see as an opportunity, some might see it as a threat because of not being able to cope with it. As I said, in the banking industry, how the private bankers, banking industry has emerged and used technology to make banking convenient, something which otherwise customers could have never dreamt of, right? Yeah, so it can be seen as a threat or as an opportunity. So if you look at the classification, how many kind of business environment you have: internal environment, you have external environment, and the external environment consists of the micro environment, which means the immediate environment outside your organization, which could be your customers, which could be your suppliers, creditors, distributors, dealers. And any change in the micro environment affects and impinges on the organization's activities directly. For example, we saw the Maruti case, and we saw that a labor problem could have an effect on their suppliers and the vendors too, the dealers. More number of waitage period, the lockout, it had a huge impact. So that's your micro environment. Macro is still larger, that is beyond the control of your business, and it could be your socio-cultural, technological, economical, and all these aspects which are part of your macro environment, which is beyond the control of the business. Is that clear? Micro is your immediate environment, macro is your larger environment on which the business does not have any say, but it directly have some say in terms of your productivity and performance. So you have your global business environment, which talks about policy framework, business sentiment, and economic indicators. For example, you had the euro crisis. You had the euro crisis, and it had its effect in the intensity could have varied, but it had its effect on various other economies, isn't it? Then government imposed restrictions. Yeah, look, carry on with your question. Meanwhile, I'll continue, others will be left behind. Yeah, so means we are still on. One organization could decide whether we need to go global, or we would like to be limited to our domestic operations. Deciding upon which markets to enter and which ones to avoid. Choosing a right strategy and methodology to enter the global market. For example, if you want to export. Now, is exporting the right strategy when the financial crisis is there? Socio-cultural environment related with the nature of human relationship within the society, and the learned and the shared behavior. For example, I was reading a news yesterday which said McDonald's is coming out exclusively with retail outlets which would sell vegetable burgers, burgers which are stuffed with vegetables exclusively, right? So that is, I felt that's purely an outcome of a socio-cultural environment, and specifically they are planning their locations at religious organizations. For example, near the Golden Temple, and maybe at Vaishno Devi Temple. So McDonald's is, yeah. So that is because a social cultural environment. That's a place where people go for pilgrimage and visit the deities, and they would like to be off from a place which sells non-vegetarian stuff too. It's a huge opportunity, and if it succeeds, internal is your internal policies, HR policies, your communication policies, your wage compensation, reward strategies. All that is your internal environment. Which one in the sense? Micro? No. There's nothing called threat. Today, every organization has to be alert towards their internal and external environment. You can't say external is important and internal is. If you think that, then you will have a case like Maruti Manesar. So micro, internal and external has to be managed. Equally, micro and macro has to be managed. Has to be understood. Has to be diagnosed. Because today we're talking about boundaryless world. In some way or the form, other way, we are getting impacted. Is that clear? So social environment creates or influences the attitude, personality, thought process, and behavior of the people. People's attitude towards business and work is also strongly influenced by the culture in which they are born and brought up. Yeah, today a lot of organizations are talking about a diverse culture. trying to attract expatriates to our country. But does our country have the necessary hygiene and infrastructure to attract the expatriates? Then technological environment, as I said, it has adaptation in terms of adaptation and the buying capacity of people. Then you have the economic environment, where your economic system, whether you have a capitalist structure, whether a socialist structure, or a mixed economy, your economic policy in terms of industrial policy, fiscal policy, monetary policy, FDI norms, how are this viewed and understood by people outside the country, and they would like to invest in your country in various sectors. There are economic indices like national income, value of imports and exports, per capita income, rate of growth of GNP, distribution of income, all that shows how much of your products could get sold if it gets invested. Then state of economic infrastructure in terms of financial institutions, banking infrastructure, its regulation, how much of friendly or investor friendly it is. Then strength of money and capital markets. Strength of money and capital markets. So you always have a rupee, dollar, euro kind of a factors which impacts your exporters and importers. So economic trends and events do affect business performance. Why we are discussing this, and the subject is because you just studied about management and organization and the important skills that one requires to have, but along with that you need to understand the business environment so that you can lead your organization to better outcomes. Legal environment. What is legal environment? Law system. Yeah, Samsung Apple suit, excellent. Laws and compliances, statutory laws, labor laws, company laws. How much of stringency, how much of leniency, how much of the government intervention, and how much of policy guidelines are there, and how much of implementation happens. Environmental concerns, yes, today you're talking about greener environment, you're talking about carbon emissions, you're talking about ecology, you're talking about products which are ecologically viable and environmentally suitable, so you're talking about sustainable practices. Yeah, right. So these are all important business environment factors which have impact on the business. Today, even for example, yeah, cyber laws have become quite important today. Ashit Mishra, yeah, right. Customers also are wanting products which are eco-friendly. You're talking about organic products. Yeah. Just go through that point, please. We have just discussed all that. Just mentioned all that. Political environment is strengthened by factors like constitution, degree of stability of the government, and today we are talking about we are witnessing actually this kind of a coalition government, and the constraint it has to go through, and what kind of an effect it has on how the outside world is viewing you. You had a Time magazine who talked about an incompetent prime minister and the PM office taking up at the highest level and responding to those comments. So basically having roadblocks while implementing reforms here, isn't it? We are all witnessing. You are all reading these cases on a day-to-day basis in the discussions happening across. And I think day before yesterday, the Indian Prime Minister's office took up about how they have come out with a statement where you're talking about a non-performing Prime Minister, right? So how much of friendly and how much of facilitator it is acting as in terms of, yeah, Vodafone tax was there, then you had, I guess, Reebok case was there. Then you have demographic environment, which includes the factors like size, density and location of human population, distribution of a particular market. I think demographics has made Maruti choose, another location in Gujarat. Similarly, Shingur, as far as demographic environment was also concerned, they took up the, the Reebok case was about the ethics of the senior management, how much they indulged in fraud, which was in tune to huge loss to the company. Yeah, a lot of examples are there. Now, basically, what we are looking at when we're talking about business, we're not going to a depth of it because you have other subjects tackling this topic. What we're looking at is how do you, as managers, you are vigilant about broad trends appearing in the environment, how closely you are observing it and trying to understand and diagnose it, determining the relevance of an environmental trend in the sense how products, how technology which you are encashing upon, which you are adopting, is environmental friendly, and how much of acceptability of that product is in the market. Yes, nuclear plant in Kerala. Yeah, examining the likely impact of an environmental trend on a product or a market. Yeah, just mentioned about nuclear plant in Kerala. You mentioned about the manufacturing, the carbon emissions. Relating the outcome of an environmental trend to corporate strategy, what needs to be done. Planning has to be, intensive, has to be redesigned. Changes that could be introduced in current products or services. Feasible opportunities that the company should follow for taking an action. Yeah, Alok, carry on. Alok has been quite active in the class. Yeah, Alok, carry on. Yeah, demographic problem in today. Yesterday I was watching a discussion where what's that guy's name? The Mumbai Raj Thackeray, I think. Yeah, Raj Thackeray was talking about Mumbai, the problems in Mumbai, and how migrants from other cities are causing problems in Mumbai law and order. Yeah, and his statements are quite provocative and could have serious problems as far as two states are concerned, and the appropriate state government's reaction to it and the people's response to it, and ultimately the organizational or a managerial response to these political statements. I think there can't be immense planning about it because these are all ad hoc statements that come across, and one has to be vigilant and keep addressing their employees through communication, active communication. Yeah. It's happening across states today. Yes. Yes, Ashwini. Yeah, true. Across. So vigilance is required, and communication is required. Interaction is required. Policy guidelines towards what kind of communication should happen within organizations which are not sensitive. All that has to, made in or brought to practice. Yeah, what is that for ourselves test? So we in this chapter we looked at the business environment, which is complex, dynamic, multifaceted, and which has far-reaching impact. We also talked about the internal and the external environment. We talked about the micro and the macro environment. Micro, which is the immediate environment of the organization, which constitutes customers, suppliers, creditors, distributors, dealers. Macro consists of your global trends, social, technological, economical, political, demographic and legal environment. Then what are the steps that needs to be developed by managers to deal with the business environment? For example, being vigilant, determining the relevance of a business environment to your industry, examining the likely impact of a trend on a product or a market, identifying and examining the new opportunities that a new trend appears to provide. For example, uh, packaging of products in different formats. You had, once upon a time huge um, packs. Today you have sachets coming in various forms, which is a business opportunity for many organizations. Identifying and examining the new opportunities and relating the outcome of a trend to corporate strategy. No, I'm having a recap about the chapter which we did. This I'm moving to the third chapter, which is about corporate social responsibility. Yeah, now we have moved on to page number 42, corporate social responsibility. Kindly refer to that chapter. Yeah, it's uploading. You'll just get it. Hang on, we are just uploading the slides. So the term social responsibility, as it suggests, means different things to different people. Whether you having the classical view, the social obligation view, the socio-economic view, the social responsiveness view. And if you look at the concept, it's a legacy of the 20th century. Till the 20th century, the objective of business enterprises was exclusively economic, and they were highly profit-centric. In the light of a favorable demand and supply situation, business enterprises wielded a great deal of power. They could sell whatever they produced because the demand for most of the goods were generally more than the supply. But over the years, with the intensification of competition and the supply exceeding the demand, in a good number of industries, the power of business has declined. With the strengthening of capitalism, business emerged as a dominant global force. It resulted in the establishment of large multinational organizations whose turnover today is more than the combined GDP of many small countries. Okay, Neha. Abhinav, you'll receive the material. We are referring to corporate social responsibility. I'm just introducing the subject. The concept of social responsibility, became popular after the publication of Social Responsibilities of Businessmen by Howard R. Bowen, who was an economist. He suggested that businesses should consider the impact of the decisions on society. And that is why you are talking about sustainable business practices, and you have sustainability reports generated now. During the 1960s, the CSR movement gained further momentum due to increased public consciousness about the responsibility of business enterprises to follow ethical concerns and preserve or enhance natural environment. Now there is an assignment which I would like to give you. Pick up any organization, for example Tata. Are you all listening? Yeah, Tata, P&G, Unilever, Dabur, Microsoft, IBM. You can pick up Indian organizations also, Birla. Aditya Birla group of companies. You can take up some of the insurance sector, banking sector. Go to the website and identify their CSR practices. It's a very good assignment. Also, I would like you to pick up some of the ethics of individuals and business practices which have had an impact on the business. For example, we had a recent case of Rajat Gupta, yeah, and we had the Vodafone case, we had the Reebok case, all having a huge impact on the business.